Hello, everybody. We are group 3. We are going to talking about superlatives and comparatives. And we are María Elisa Maldonado.
My name is Ronald Gonzalez.
This is María del Carmen Guzmán. This is Tiffany Marroquín.
This is Fatima Cáceres.
Crista Mejía.
Esther Hernández.
Marilima.
This is Marta Julia.
Okay, today we are going to talk about relative and comparative. So, what this topic matter? About the superlative and comparative is very important for the student that show when to use comparatives and when not to. The important comparative is the highest level and the lowest level about how to describe something, object, or people. So the superlative is just indicating how that process to certain quality to the greatest degree, such as the tallest, the slowest, etc. Comparative and superlative are very important because that one is a different about the comparative. Show the difference between two things, for example, taller, faster, more interesting, and superlative to show the higher to the lower level in a group. So we have an example right here about the adjectives, comparative, superlative, tall, taller, the tallest, small, smaller, smaller, intelligent, more intelligent, the most intelligent, good, better, the best, far, farther, further, the father, the father.
Now here, in this lesson, students will learn how to use comparatives and superlative in English to compare people, places, and things. We will understand how to form comparative adjectives. He will also learn the rules for short and long adjectives, how to use them in comparisons, and how to identify the highest or lowest degree in a group using superlatives.
Now that we got an introduction and why it matters, it is important to understand what are they. Comparative adjectives are the ones that show us to compare to things, people, objects, or ideas. And superlatives show us the highest level of a place, object, or thing, and the lowest level too. Now, how can we form a superlative and comparative adjectives? The important rule is when an adjective has one syllable, you add ER at the end for comparative and EST for superlatives. If the word has 3 or more syllables, what you do is that you add in front of the adjective the word more and the word must. For example, more interesting or most interesting. And lastly, if the word has 2 syllables, you have to be careful because there are some rules you must take into consideration. If the adjective or adverb is ending in ly, and if you use the verb or the adjective in the present and the past participle, or some specific endings that you see on my presentation, you need to use more and must, even though it's a 2 syllables adjective. And we also have some irregular comparative and superlative verbs that we need to learn in order to use them correctly because they change the structure completely. That's why they are irregular. As an example, we have good, better, and best. Well, better, and best too. So that's a simple form to create and use superlative and comparative adjectives and adverbs in our daily routine.
I will explain the pronunciation and spelling of comparatives and superlatives. First, why pronunciation and spelling are important. Understanding pronunciation and spelling rules helps learners, speak more natural, pronounce comparatives and superlatives correctly, avoid spelling mistakes, and communicate more clearly in English. In English, the endings er and s are often pronounced very quickly in natural speech. For example, the comparative ending R usually sounds like E, as in bigger, faster, or taller. Sometimes the spelling changes when we form comparatives and superlatives. For example, if an adjective ends in E, we only add R or ST, like nice, nicer, or nicest. If the adjective ends in consonants plus Y, the Y change I, like happy, happier, happiest. Finally, one short adjective ends with only vowel and one consonant. We double the last consonant. For example, big becomes bigger and biggest. And this is a pronunciation and spelling rules helps learners speak and write English more clearly.
Okay, there are rules that have also always their exceptions. We usually use these rules as general rules, but we have to be careful when we have to use it and when we don't have to use it. In this case, the first rule is don't use they with comparatives. The first one is when we use the of two of them statement. For example, he is the older. Here we know that we are talking about two objects, but we're just referring to one of them. And the next one is when we use complementary processes. For example, the more you eat, the more you want. The more you eat is our cause, and the more you want is the effect. The second one is always use the with superlatives. There are cases where we don't have to use the, as when the first one is when we express like try your best or do your best. Instead of using the, we use the possessive adjectives. For example, we did our best instead of saying we did the best. The second one is when the adverb for the superlative forms, works with the as an adjective of manner. In this case, would be Lydia sings most beautifully. And the last one is when we want to infer the structure that something is the best or the easiest or the safer thing to do. We omit the D, because if we say the safest to leave before it gets dark, it doesn't make much sense. And the third one is stylistic choices. We have adjective replacing adverbs. He runs a lot faster than expected instead of using a lot more fast. These make sounds kind of natural, so that's why oftenly they replace adjectives with the adverbs. And the last one is pronouns. We don't use the normal pronoun. We don't say I'm faster than he. If in case we want to use the pronoun in its natural way, we have to use an auxiliary verb or just the objective pronoun. And there are typical difficulties for learners. The first one is recognize comparative and superlative. This has to do a lot with pronunciation because they can confuse if you are pronouncing rather than a comparative or a superlative. And then we have speaking and writing. First, we have overusing more and must. Instead of saying he's taller than him, we say he's more tall than him. But this also is a lot influenced depending if we're using short or long adjectives or if they are in irregular form. The second one is using more in superlatives in statements instead of most. We get to confuse a lot if we use more to describe something when we have to use most. In this case, she is the more beautiful girl I've ever met is incorrect. We have to say she is the most beautiful girl I ever met. And using that instead of than. Sometimes when we hear it, we can confuse it a lot. And we're thinking that we're saying that, but that's incorrect. We always say that something is better, something is nicer than something else.
And well, let's continue with another topic so important, that is who affects environment, daily life, language, culture, and social. Daily life, comparative and superlative. Our daily environment, school, home, and friends, and routines, and habits affects who we learn, feel, and act. Well, the first is school and studies. An organized classroom helps students concentrate better than a messy one. Example, I learn faster a quiet classroom than in a noisy one. And two, social life. Friends and social activities affect mood and happiness. Example, spending time with supportive friends is happier than being alone. Daily habits and routines. Planning your day makes life easier and more productive. Example, I manage homework better when I plan my day. And another is language, comparative and superlative. English that is applied in a real task, such as studying, planning, or social interaction. First, functional language. Language used for a specific purpose in real situation, like asking, requesting, comparing, giving opinions. One example is comparatives and superlatives are part of functional language when students explain preference. For example, Mary is harder than English. Communicative language. English used to interact effectively with others. Comparative and superlative are essential in communicative language to express opinions and choices. Contextual English. English used depending on the situation or context, like school, friends, or family. Example, in context English, we often say, this assignment is the easiest of all that show comparison.
How culture affects comparison. Cultural context also influence the way people use comparison. Different cultures may focus on different qualities when comparing people, objects, or situations. For example, education, social status, achievements. Culture influences what people consider important or valuable when making comparison. Example sentences. She is more educated than her brother. This tradition is more important in our culture. How social context affects language. Social relationships also influence the use of comparatives and superlatives. The way people compare things can change depending on who they are talking or to and the social situation. For example, speaking with friends, speaking with teachers, speaking in formal situations. Social context helps determine how comparisons are used in communication. Example sentences. This exam was harder than the last one. She is the most experienced teacher in the school.
In summary, comparative and superlative are important grammar forms in English. They help us compare people, places, and things in a clear way. Comparatives are used to compare two things, while superlative is to use to compare three or more things and show the highest or lowest degree. Understanding these forms helps students communicate better and describe difference more effectively in daily conversations in academic context.
Reflection. Learning about comparatives and superlatives helped me to describe differences between things more clearly. It helped me too to improve my grammar and writing skills. When we understand rules, make it easier to avoid common grammar mistakes. Understanding these forms improves our ability to communicate ideas and opinions. Comparatives allow us to compare two things clearly. Superlatives show the highest or the lowest levels among three or more things. Using them correctly makes our speaking and writing more precise and expressive. Overall, learning comparatives and superlatives makes my English stronger and clearer.
Thank you so much for your attention.